What's up, guys? It's Farronhart, and today I wanted to talk about Resident Evil 3 Remake. Now, the game's been out for a while, a few weeks, but I really wanted to take my time with this game because it was one of my most anticipated games of this year. So I took my time with the game, played it a bunch of times, as well as the companion game, the Resistance game, which I'll talk about probably in another video. But I want to talk about Resident Evil 3 Remake, what I felt about it. I did really enjoy it, but I just want to talk about what about it I enjoyed. Did it meet my expectations? And you know, at being a Resident Evil fan and Resident Evil 3 being one that always really stuck with me as a kid, you know, did it live up to that, and to what degree? Since the game's been out for a while, I'm not going to hold back on any spoilers and everything, so if you haven't played the game, there's going to be some spoiler stuff in here. Okay, so just jumping right into it, you know, the first thing you notice is the game is gorgeous. It's a beautiful game, the graphics are amazing, the lighting in particular, coming from Resident Evil 2, the lighting, because that game was already a really beautiful game, but they really stepped up the lighting, the way the lighting affects the environment. It really changes things. It looks great. So the graphics, amazing. The visuals, the characters look great. Hair, the faces, eyes, everything, the way they emote, all looks amazing. Production in terms of everything you're seeing visually is on point. The engine, RE engine that they're using, it's done wonders for them. They really found what they were looking for in terms of a graphical engine that can really accurately and stunningly produce photoreal graphics, and they nailed it. And Jill, look, she's not Julia Voth, okay? She doesn't have that. They didn't use Julia Voth as a model, which I would have preferred. They would have kind of utilized her features in there a bit more. But I believe the model's name is Sasha Zatova. Look, the girl is gorgeous, okay? I can't hate on that, okay? She's beautiful, beautiful girl, and she looks great. Jill looks great as with her face. I do prefer they could have put a few things of Julia in there, but hey, she looks great. She's very easy on the eyes, and with this graphical style and the visual production fidelity, it looks amazing. And also, Carlos looks better than ever, okay? I think it looks great. He is a very, very sexy man in this game, so there's that too. From a gameplay perspective, it definitely feels a bit more fast-paced compared to Resident Evil 2, which is in line with the original. I do recall playing the original Resident Evil 2 and the original Resident Evil 3, which for these games I did. I would go back and I play the original games first, you know, because I want to have that in my mind so I can make those direct comparisons, because for me, with Resident Evil 2 doing that, it actually made me appreciate the game more. I actually never talked about Resident Evil 2, but I think the game is excellent. I honestly, it's like 9 or 10 material. There's really not much bad to say about that game. It really helped to go back and play the original games and see how design has improved. It's such a cool thing, especially for me as an artist and designer, to look at that stuff and see how they've just improved over the years, and how gaming has improved, you know, how it's improved as an art form, and how it's improved at a technical level. It's just awesome to see, to the point where even things that you never imagined they would do, they've improved on, to all the way down to things that you would think these are small things, but how did they not do that before? You know, and so it really gives you that extra perspective from going back and playing the original game. So I wanted to do that with Resident Evil 3, so I did. And so the pace of the game is a bit faster. Zombies, they have a bit more pep in their step. They strut a little harder, but as a result, so is your character. Jill is a faster character. She could move much quicker. And they removed offensive weapons, or were they defensive weapons? I'm not really sure what they were, but they're basically like the original, like Resident Evil Remake, the first Resident Evil Remake on the GameCube. They gave you defensive items, and they implemented that into Resident Evil 2 Remake, where you could utilize the weapons as offensive but also defensive. That's really their primary means of use, because if you get grabbed, you can use them to get them off of you. But in this game, Resident Evil 3 Remake, similar to Resident Evil 3, you can't utilize any kind of defensive item, but because of your mobility in the form of a dodge as well as increased speed, the idea is to avoid getting hit altogether. Now, one of the cooler action-y elements that they added to this game from the dodge was a type of bullet time. You can dodge, it slows down time, and then you can have Jill draw her weapon and then fire at enemies as weak points. There was a type of dodge mechanic in Resident Evil 3 where you dodge, but not only dodge, but you could have Jill barrel roll and then prop herself up on one knee and shoot. But I don't know that it had any mechanical purpose other than just, you know, looking cool. And obviously it dodges, you dodge, but she had different dodge animations. I don't know if they made a difference, but in this one, if you dodge without being within a certain range or timing, then you'll just dodge normally, and the zombie, if they try to grab you, they'll miss you. But if you dodge within a certain range at a certain time, you'll dodge and she'll barrel roll, and it'll create that bullet time effect. For someone like me who loves action games and stuff like that, and I've always been big on the action elements introduced in Resident Evil, I'm actually cool with that. I like seeing the characters that I like in games do cool things. I'm totally down for the bullet time element, and it does feel really good when you do nail that perfect dodge and you nail the zombie right in the head and it just bursts like a water balloon. It's super satisfying, and it looks really cool when you're able to pull it off. Now in this game, they simplified the way you combine herbs as well as the way you merge the gunpowder together to create ammunition. It's much more simplified compared to the Resident Evil 2 remake as well as the original Resident Evil 3. They took out the blue herb for poison, and they took out the I believe it was the white gunpowder ammunition. So I'm guessing they probably wanted to streamline that process for the sake of accessibility, and because the game is a bit faster in terms of movement and zombies and, you know, the pace of the game, they wanted to kind of speed things up a bit, and so that's fine. I can work with that. And honestly, I can't really stress enough how cool it is to be in this era we live in, where we could play something like this, where it actually exists, you know? And I think that's one of the biggest things that keeps me coming back to the game, is that it's like it actually exists, and it looks amazing, and it feels good to play, and it's like, wow, this is Resident Evil 3, but as I like to call these games, reimagined, right? Because there's so much more than remakes, really. Like, they're not a one-to-one remake at all. Capcom is doing something totally different, where they're reimagining them as if, you know, they were made today, you know, not going like one-to-one, same dialogue, same environments, everything. It's totally new reimagining of the game, and it's really fascinating to see this happen and be able to play a game like this, and it's actually just such an amazing thing. Okay, so now with all that said, I have to get into the stuff that didn't meet my expectations, and I think this could be said for a lot of people out there who've been talking about the game at this point. There's certain things the original, and that's the thing about the remake, the original creates certain expectations that the game just inherently has to deliver on, or else it'll be disappointing. And unfortunately, with this game, unlike Resident Evil 2, this game, Resident Evil 3 remake, or as I like to say, reimagining, it falls short on so many levels. There were extreme liberties taken with the story, not nearly as much city freedom as I would hoped, and I think a lot of people were looking forward to. No live selection decision mechanic like it was in the original Resident Evil 3. Far too many guided sections, you know, on rails sections. No clock tower stage, no city hall, no swanky restaurant, no park, cemetery, or cottage. The bar and the gas station are both used in cutscenes only. The boss battles, I mean, even though they're epic and cinematic, they look awesome. Nemesis does take some crazy and unexpected forms in this game compared to the original, and I personally thought that was really cool.
Isn't it? That's what they were talking about, the generators. Let's go.
Bitch can't even swim.
Ow, Jill. God damn, what the hell? Are you serious with this shit? What the hell? Oh, you gotta be kidding me with this shit. What the fuck? You gotta be kidding me with this shit. Oh my god. Oh, that's badass. Oh, that's super cool. Oh my god, that's cool as hell.
Damn, it needs power.
This is some Gundam shit right here. Yo. I wasn't prepared for how sick that was.
It took me way off guard. They're so shallow. They just feel like visual feasts, but without the substance of the game. Like, the gameplay just doesn't feel like Nemesis doesn't feel like a threat, because either he shows up and it's like on rails, or it's just a really cinematic boss battle, but he's not really a threat to you. He's spending more time running around you and bouncing off cars trying to do his best King Kong impression than he is actually trying to defeat you, or in this case Jill Stars actually murder her. There's no mercenary mode. Even the model viewer is missing the animation feature from Resident Evil 2 Remake. I mean, the minor, small things, but that starts to add up, you know, because it's small things and big things that it's missing. The puzzles are just way too easy in this game. I mean, they were pretty difficult in Resident Evil 3 when I first played it, but these are just, you could essentially just mash your way through the puzzle without even really knowing what you're doing. And it's just like, what kind of puzzle is that? Resident Evil 2 Remake found a much better balance with puzzles like with the chemical mixing puzzle, where it's just like, you kind of, it's tricky at first, but you kind of start to get an idea of what you need to be doing and how to go about it. And I was like, that's a much better balance that they found there than what they were able to achieve here in Resident Evil 3. When they released the demo of Resident Evil 3 Remake, I played it, and I remember thinking to myself, man, I really enjoy the openness of the city. You know, I felt like almost every door you came across you could almost go into. I mean, there were some that were locked, but it was like I would be able to break those locks eventually or get through those locks. And I was like, it just feels like I could go through so many different doors. I liked the freedom, you know, being able to roam around a little bit, right? Just kind of expanding your reach a little bit in the game. And I was really excited for what the main game would provide to elaborate on that. And the problem is, the demo pretty much shows you everything Raccoon City has to offer. Everything outside of what the demo shows you is on rails experience. Every other part of Raccoon City you just blast straight through in a very guided scenario, usually with Nemesis chasing you. And I'm just like, they wasted that opportunity. I mean, look, the on rails action sequences are cool the first time, but they don't lend themselves well to multiple playthroughs. And even the initial playthrough, you start to get the impression like you're just running from Nemesis to get to another section, and then they start cutting off certain sections so that you can't go through them anymore. And it's just like, you start to see the limitations of the game design really early. This leads to one of the biggest problems in the game, Nemesis. Nemesis, one of the most iconic tyrant character enemies in Resident Evil. He basically is what kind of started, I think, those teams at Capcom to actually want to implement more of enemies that is kind of stalkerish enemies. Like, he was like at the beginning of that, I think. As a kid, that always stuck with me, how he was just this constant threat pursuing you if you would run away or if you felt like you defeated him. And he gets back up, you know, he never stays down, you know. It's like wow, like that was, it was very tense. It really kind of wear down on your nerves, and you're always being pursued by this creature who's really powerful, really strong, and he's creepy, you know, and that really stuck with me, you know. I never played a game like that before back then. Here in this game, they don't hit the mark with Nemesis. It's more annoying because it's such a guided experience, right? He shows up mainly for action set pieces, and so it takes away the fear or the intimidation factor that could normally be there to the degree that it was there before. It's really unfortunate that he did that. When you look at how they did Mr. X, it wasn't so much of a narrative thing. He was put there as an obstacle in your path, right? You're still playing the game, but here, you know, he's put in an obstacle in your path. It wasn't meant to be a vehicle for like just pushing the cinematic aspects and pushing the on-rail sequences. And that's more of what Nemesis is, and it's really unfortunate that he couldn't be more like Mr. X, but just ramped up just a bit, you know, don't make him so necessarily so aggressive. Make him loom in the shadows a bit more. You know, he comes after you, you hear him, even before you see him, you hear the stars. It's like in the background, you're like, oh, he's here somewhere. You know, play it more like that, you know what I mean? But they made him like this ultra aggressive Spider-Man swinging around. Like, it's just like, okay. I mean, it's cool, but it's not lending itself well to being able to explore. But that's not how they built the game. They They used him just as a cinematic vehicle, pushing you through the game. Also, because of those more on-rails experiences when you're running away from Nemesis, the game doesn't really encourage you to look back or search for your surroundings or anything like that, because that's kind of the idea of a guided section. If it's on rails, you just move forward. So you may end up missing good items and equipment permanently. During my first playthrough, when Nemesis was chasing Jill right before she enters the sewers, I shot a red canister which stunned him, right? But because I was trying to get away in a hurry, and I thought the game was just trying to basically just tell me, hey, keep running, because it's an on-rails section, I didn't even think to go over to check him for items before I entered the sewers. Leaving that item Nemesis dropped, those cases, those special cases, it was stuck in that unreachable part of the stage of Raccoon City for the rest of the game. And I could see it on the map, but you can't go back to that particular area of the subway system, so it's just stuck there on the map. There's that item, but you can't get to it. And I'm like, what the heck? So as I mentioned, when you defeat or temporarily defeat Nemesis, he drops an item, and that's actually reminiscent to the original game, which is really cool. I believe in the original game, the order of items he dropped was something along the lines of one piece of a pistol, then you get the second and final piece of a pistol, then there was a first aid case that could hold 3 first aid sprays, then he would drop a piece of a shotgun, then he would drop the final piece of a shotgun, and then you would get another first aid case, I believe, which could hold an additional, I believe, 3 first aid sprays. Now in the remake, when Nemesis is temporarily defeated, he drops a larger clip for your pistol, he drops a suppressor for that pistol, and then he drops some shotgun shells. I think that's it. And that's like, it's kind of weak, because like, if they consolidated the items from the original game, we should have at least have gotten the first aid case or something unique for beating Nemesis instead of shotgun shells, which can be found in other places in the game. That's the kind of thing that this game has a lot of, just opportunities completely squandered. The live selection mechanic, as I mentioned before, is completely missing. The original game had that mechanic, and it encouraged playing the game again to see new scenarios. That game, it never felt on rails, and unfortunately, in the remake of Resident Evil 3, not only do we not have the live selection sequences, allowing for different choices and different scenarios that you can find throughout the game, you also have to replay through this very lengthy on-rail sequence in the beginning of the game anytime you want to repeat the game. And this is in a game, in a franchise that is known for encouraging repeated playthroughs. It almost feels like you're being kind of, I don't know, it's I don't want to say punished, but it's definitely a slog to have to just kind of play through these sequences over and over again, and you're just like pushing start, skip cutscene, pushing start, skip cutscene, run through this hallway, push start, skip cutscene, run through this hallway, push start, skip cutscene, jump through this window, push start, skip cutscene. And then you have to like walk through this alleyway and listen to Brad talk again, and then you're walking down the city street and you can't run yet until the game says that you can run. And it's just like, oh, come on, man. Like in Resident Evil 2 Remake, you have like a cutscene or two, you go through the gas station, get out of the gas station, there's like a cutscene 2 or 3, you're outside, you make your way to the police department. Once you're in the police department, that's it, you're playing the game. And on second run, it's even better, because it plays it almost like an episode that you've seen already, and they're catching you up to speed on what happened, so it just skips it all for you. You know what I mean? And then you end up in an entirely new part of the station, and it changes things up, and that game was flawless, man. Like, but this one, it's missing so much on so many aspects when it comes to Resident Evil 3. And of course, as you would expect for a game that has like so many on-rails sections, you're gonna end up having your QTE moments, and some of which feel unnecessary. One of which is towards the end of the game, where you have to hold forward so that Jill can pull herself forward while Nemesis is pulling her back. And the whole time I'm thinking to myself, this is going on for way too long. Like, it's just like, why couldn't they just play this out in a cutscene? If either they just skip that part and let you just watch it during a cutscene, or they make the QTE more involved, right? Where he's pulling your leg and you can turn and shoot at him or something, turn it into something that's not just, you're just holding forward while she crawls forward for like 10 seconds. It's just like, it's so just redundant. I don't know why they even put that in there. Now, in terms of some of the things that just kind of bothered me that might be on the smaller scale, they got rid of the Nemesis killing Brad sequence. Like, for me as a kid, that was one of the most iconic Resident Evil sequences of all time. Like, that stuck with me from a child all the way up until now. Like, I still remember that, and I'm just like, they completely got rid of that. Now, to be fair, I do like kind of how they explained why Brad is on the police grounds, and how that kind of ties into Resident Evil 2 Remake, but it's still unfortunate how they changed so much, and they cut out certain scenes in the game that are super iconic, that I'm just like, why take so many extreme liberties in so many different areas, even if it was something that was really iconic, or at least I thought it was. And another thing that was brought to my attention as I played the game a few times is the game paints the picture of the city's crisis very well. It's showing people running, screaming as the environment around you is just in disarray. Just the overall setting of the crumbling city in crisis is great from a visual standpoint, but that quickly falls by the wayside once you get to walk around the city and there's no more civilians running around in panic, or there aren't any mercenaries fighting and being overrun by zombies or anything. The original game seemed to make an attempt to show that there were still people fighting and trying to survive, and that was the original PlayStation game, when there was but so much you could put on the screen at the same time, or even on the overall limited space of the disc. So I feel like the rational transition from that to this game would have been a game where, as you're turning a corner, you see a woman who's like screaming for her life and trying to push away a zombie, and if you run around that corner you can see kind of like her attempt to escape, and maybe you can help save her even though she might die in vain anyway, or you see her get like chewed up around that corner, and you hear like some of the mercenaries shooting in the background, and instead of just walking in on a mercenary in a dark alley, he's already dead, and you pick up a note by him and you read the note. Instead, you see it take place, but you couldn't stop it, you know what I mean? Or you tried to stop it, and maybe you temporarily postpone their death, but they ultimately still die in another way, or whatever. Like that, I feel like that would have been the evolution of what they tried to do in the original game, and in this one it just seems like they just cut that stuff, or they just reserve it to just notes, which is similar to what they did with the other stages in the original Resident Evil 3, which we didn't get here, such as the clock tower. The clock tower is shown in the bar, which I mentioned is only shown in a cutscene in this game, where in the original game, in the bar where you meet Brad, you can pick up a photograph that shows a clock tower, and it's foreshadowing the clock tower that you'll find the second half of the game, where in this game, when I first was playing the game, I saw the clock tower in the distance. I was like, man, look at these visuals, this is awesome. Oh man, they're gonna have us have a stage where we get to the clock tower, so we have to fight our way to the clock tower, then we get to the clock tower. This is gonna be dope. I was licking my chops, man. I was rubbing my hands together. I was like, yeah, they know what we want. But that's not what happened. We just get a note that explains the clock tower and some of the history of the clock tower, and then you just get an on-rail sequence into a boss fight, and then they just completely skip the clock tower and just go straight to the hospital. I'm like, what the hell? I mean, there's so many things that they just kind of squandered, and it's really unfortunate. I still enjoy the game, because for just, again, I mentioned just it existing in the way that it does, and some of the stuff they did get right, and it's still fun to play. But man, so many wasted opportunities and things that they cut out. I'm just like, why? Just work on it a little bit longer and put this stuff in the game. I'm serious. I would have waited another year just so that I could have gotten the other half of the game. It's just like, there's so many larger things that I could pick apart and that I have, and even smaller things I could talk about, like, having Carlos being played in the Raccoon City Police Department instead of Jill, which I guess is an interesting change, and you get some interesting commentary from somebody who's never been there before. But then at the same time, it takes out aspects that I would have preferred they did, such as if Jill was at the RPD, then it would have explained why Nemesis would have been at the RPD, which would have explained why there was holes in the walls in different areas of the RPD. But instead, in the game, they show that in the locker room into the woman's restroom, the reason why that hole is there is because Carlos used some C4 to blow up the wall, and that's the reason why that water heater is spraying, or whatever that thing is, and the reason why there's holes in the walls. But the reason why that doesn't make sense is because if that's the reason why there's a gajillion holes in the walls, like it looks like somebody ran through multiple walls, then what happened to the wall that was on the third floor? Now, see, if Jill went to the RPD, then not only would you have been able to explain those multiple holes in the walls as just Nemesis running through multiple walls to get to Jill, like I thought they were going to do, which I thought would have been awesome, but it also would have explained why there was a hole in the wall on the third floor, right? So it's just like there's these inconsistencies, and maybe they didn't do it because they wanted to subvert expectation. But look, if you got a good idea, if it's a good idea, it's a good idea. You know, don't try to subvert expectation if the idea that you're going to go with might not be as good as the one that originally was there or could have been there, you know. Anyway, at this point, like I could just nitpick things, you know, because, you know, the sequence is still pretty cool, and you do play as Carlos more, which I guess is good, I suppose. I you know, I just want to play as Jill, so, you know, it's whatever. But I do like Carlos more in this, I think. You know, he's cool. Anyway, you know, I'm gonna end the video here before I start just nitpicking at other things, like how the Lightning Hawk has one less additional equipable part from Resident Evil 2 with Leon. Like, where'd the other part go? Why couldn't they give you the other part? Like, if anything, you want to add more. You don't want to take away. Like, okay, I'm gonna stop right there. I'm gonna stop right there. Those are some of my impressions on the game. Again, I enjoy it, but it's heavily flawed. It's a heavily flawed game. It's not even the amount of time it takes to beat it. It has more to do with the amount of substance that has been pulled away from the game, and the time it takes to beat it is just a byproduct of the substance that is missing. And that's the problem with the game. It's too much content cut. There's a half a game missing somewhere. So anyway, that's what I think about the game. You know, for anybody out there watching the video, you know, I'm sure so many people have their opinions out there already, but I wanted to get mine out there finally. You know, what do you guys think about the game if you played it? You know, sound off in the comment section. I'll catch you guys in the next video. This is Farronhart signing out. Man, the rail cannon in this game is so much cooler than the one in the original. The next time Capcom puts Jill in a fighting game, we know what her level 3 is going to be. I will be disappointed if it is not this.